either mask up or later on get vaxxed or lose your job or get suspended without pay, which is more or less the same thing. You hung on to your job, and now that we're into early 2023, I would imagine you and your colleagues, you don't have to mask up when you go underground anymore, do you?
I mean, with the mandates in place, people were still getting COVID. I just figured it was time to put an end to it. So I basically used the system against the mandate.
All throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we were told over and over and over again to follow the science, from social distancing to getting the jab. We were also told to wear non-medical masks as a measure to halt coronavirus transmissions. But for Rylen Pedneault, this did not seem logical. Rylen is a miner who works in Northern Ontario, and in 2020, the mining company he worked for required all employees to wear masks, no ifs, ands, or buts. Alas, this mandate led to workers struggling to breathe, but again, the company was insistent, follow the science. So it was that Rylen had the temerity to ask specific questions about the science of masking up hundreds of meters underground. But the more questions he asked, the more murky the follow the science narrative became. He eventually went on an investigation that took hundreds of hours and thousands of his own dollars to uncover the so-called science behind mandatory masking. But get this, folks, spoiler alert, he was unable to find anything conclusive. Fancy that. And Rylen joins me now to weigh in on the science of masking, which apparently does not even exist. First of all, Rylen, thanks so much for making time for me today.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Big fan of Rebel News.
Oh, happy to hear that. So first of all, tell us what you and your colleagues experienced while doing mining work when you were forced to wear those face diapers way back in 2020.
Well, basically, they had to be above the nose. They had to be on all the time. We were not in all locations where we video surveillance, but a lot of spots we have surveillance for safety. But yeah, we were told to make sure they were above our noses, around our faces. I explain in the book, it can be simple tasks as basic as everyday things like climbing ladders that became difficult for myself and noticing the struggle. I mean, myself, I had problems as soon as the mask went on, my nose would run, just abnormal things was going on. And I mean, with the mandates in place, people were still getting COVID. I just figured it was time to put an end to it. So I basically used the system against the mandate.
So Rylen, you and your colleagues, you didn't like wearing those things, yet management said you had to. They were even spying on you, I guess, with surveillance cameras in those areas where they existed to make sure you're wearing your mask. And I guess as we go down this path, you start to raise some impolite questions, shall we say, i.e. you're telling us to follow the science, okay, like Clara Peller, the old Wendy spokeswoman, who used to say, where's the beef? You used to say, where's the science? And apparently they had nothing to provide you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Dave, we have three very important rights as workers, and I'm pretty sure it's across Canada, but I'm 100% certain that it's followed in Ontario. But basically, we have the right to know, the right to refuse, and the right to participate. And we also follow guidelines from acts and regulations from a guideline book we call the Green Book. It's basically our Bible. It's said to be written in blood. As people get injured and we learn lessons in mining, we make regulations and acts. And some of the acts and regulations went, they conflicted with the mandate, basically on how the employer is responsible for providing certain levels of oxygen, carbon monoxide levels, and that we're not facing ourselves with biological hazards. If you can imagine, a miner puts his hands on a lot of chemicals and a lot of dirty things throughout the day. And if you've worn a mask yourself, you know that it needs to be adjusted almost every second. If you're doing something active like running a jackleg, and for those that don't know that, it's a 130-pound drill that we're using underground, and it's very difficult to operate with no mask. Never mind with one, and then to make sure that the eyes on you aren't seeing that the thing is falling down, or you're adjusting it steady. So the masks at the end of the day were quite disgusting. They did provide us with several to change out, but when you're in the heat of the moment and you're chasing that dollar and making sure your production is there, you're changing it when you can. And whenever I was changing mine, I mean, I would take it off; it would be completely black, and yeah, it was concerning to me.
Yeah, I don't see the mask being anything but an impediment rather than something to protect you from a virus. But Rylen, as I understand it, you reached out to the Ministry of Labor, basically asking them, I believe, what science are you basing this on that miners working underground with heavy duty equipment need to wear this mask, and how did those discussions go?
Well, the ministry actually didn't have a choice. They had come in one day. I followed the steps. Like I said, our right to know, right to refuse, right to participate. I used my guidelines through my green book, which I'm very familiar, being almost a 20-year experienced miner. I've had a lot of training throughout the years, and I just followed the steps. I coached the people that were unaware of what was going on, and it led to a ministry visit. I refused to wear it at work because they were not answering my questions that were brought up for close to a year. And with the advice of the ministry before before my work refusal, I didn't get into detail, but I had said I have concerns that aren't being addressed. So I did a work refusal at my work. It was quite a day. I was assaulted. They tried to throw me off the property. I stayed calm. I coached the management team on the process, and the ministry ended up coming in, making a visit, and the process started.
And wait a minute, Rylen, you said you were assaulted, as in physically assaulted?
Yes, I was physically assaulted. I built a speech for the group in the morning meeting, and I was interrupted throughout the whole speech. But basically, it entailed me getting to the end of it, refusing to work with the mask on if they could not answer my questions. The management did not like that. I mean, being watchers of the mainstream media, you can't blame them. There's a lot of different directions going on, and they thought I was crazy to be asking these questions, and they thought that I should be removed if I didn't want to agree with what the news was telling everyone. So what happened was I got in touch with a company that we use for atmospheric testing underground. I've learned to be a good friend of this individual, and they guided me to professionals, which led me to some laboratories here in the area. And basically, I started my study because the way the system works here is with a concern like that I had since I was challenging the government, I had to prove my concern legit. So I had 30 days to do so. Everybody above me that were to cooperate and to guide me through this process was they got in my way almost every step of the way. I basically ended up having to do it all on my own. I tried to use some resources at work, which are stated in the Green Book, the steps of how you take a work refusal. And as part of the steps, we have to work together. And if it means that there's study that I have to do, this has to be paid for, and this has to be organized, and this has to be helped. They have to help me. Well, no one was helping me, so I just decided to I only had 30 days, and I had to get this going. So I started reaching out to resources of my own, and this lady she tests like diesel emissions and oxygen levels and does this underground in the air. And she explained to me that she would not be able to use her equipment under a mask because it's not designed for that. And that maybe if she directed me to some of the senior scientists in the area, they'd be able to help me. So when I was organizing all my tests that I could do here, I did some in Mississauga on bacterial analysis. I had started talking with them about organizing a oxygen test under the mask and carbon monoxide test. I had seen some studies online saying that this has been done in the world, and some from the States, some from Europe. But basically, the scientists had told me that the equipment to test oxygen and carbon monoxide, I'd have to travel, and she had just suggested that I go to another state, which I couldn't at the time because I wasn't vaccinated and I couldn't cross the border. But basically, I had brought it up to the scientists saying, well, how do we know that this is safe and effective if we don't have this equipment in Canada? And she said, bingo, buddy, you're on to something.
Wow.
So basically, I started calling health officials, Alberta, BC. You can ask my wife. It put a big hindrance on my family life. I was glued to this on the phone for hours and hours and recording and just trying to get to the bottom of, show me this, that we've done these tests and they've never been done.
So indeed, Rylen, bingo, as that person said to you, you basically proved that there are no scientific studies. And as I said in the preamble, this took hundreds of hours of your time. It took thousands of dollars in terms of cost. You basically called out the authorities, and said, there's no there. You're saying follow the science, and I have proven, at least in this country, there is no science. When you made that position known, how did the discussion go from there?
Well, basically, they just blamed each other. I got up to the Ontario level, and the Ontario Health Minister's office at the time, it was Christy Elliott. She interesting story about that too. But anyways, talking to Christy Elliott's office, they kept saying, go talk to your public health in your local area. They'll be able to answer. And then I just kept getting transferred from one place to another place to another place, knowing this doesn't, and some brave individuals stated, this doesn't exist. We don't know why are you looking for this? What's the big deal? It's just a mask. Just put it on. It's not a big deal. And then I would debate with them. I have studies from Brown's Institute that I have with me even today, just to reference on that there's hundreds of studies around the world saying that masks are hazardous, and the outcome, the negatives outweigh the positives in the case that we're working with. I learned that a coronavirus is 30 times smaller than the diameter of a hair, and that a mask will do absolutely nothing to protect you. Maybe little bits, but some of the brave health officials came forward and said, this doesn't exist, buddy. Sorry.
Rylen, it's just amazing. In the beginning, they're saying follow the science, implying or inferring that there are scientific studies saying that this mask will protect you. And then when you debunk this, when you show there is no hard, tangible science, they say to you, I'm just quoting you, oh, it's just a mask. It's no big deal. Just put it on. So they go from follow the science to, hey, just do it and not ask any more pesky questions. Let's fast forward to 2023. I understand, even though I imagine you were really pissing off management and government
still
types.
there.
And yeah, still. But you, I know one of the narratives in these last 2.5 years about the COVID-19 coronavirus is the coercion so many people faced. Either mask up or later on get vaxxed or lose your job, or get suspended without pay, which is more or less the same thing. You hung on to your job, and now that we're into early 2023, I would imagine you and your colleagues, you don't have to mask up when you go underground anymore, do you?
No, we do not. No.
Okay, then. So you know what? I gotta take my hat off to you, Rylen. You're like that knight that goes out and slays the dragon single-handedly. And, it is fantastic. And I should make mention, your odyssey led you to write a book, which I believe is coming out later this month. It's called The Time I Followed Science, and I notice your name on the book cover. It's Dr. Rylen. I believe that's an inside joke that is explained in the book. But I know you're not a medical doctor. I know you're not a scientist, but it seems that with your own willpower and drive and your quest to get answers, you did the duty of what doctors and scientists, and dare I say it, investigative journalists should have been doing. You proved that this is a hoax, that there's some science behind these non-medical masks protecting people, and now you're going to share your story with the world. Rylen, last word goes to you, my friend.
Right on. Read the book. It's quite a story. Like Dave says, it's not all about the mass as well. It's about some of my childhood, how I led up to my bravery to stand up to this tyranny. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Hey folks, Rebel News loves to tell the other side of the story, but you also know we don't receive a nickel of government funding, nor would we accept it if offered. Therefore, we rely on you and your generosity. If you can please go to rebelinvestigates.com, that's rebelinvestigates.com, and make a donation, it would be greatly appreciated.